Hey guys, so this past weekend I had the pleasure of visiting the Virgil Abloh Figures of Speech exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum, and I just wanted to share some themes and takeaways that stood out to me when reviewing Virgil's life work. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is Virgil as the typographic man. So, exemplified in this piece called Pink Panther, Abloh is focused on ongoing iterations being just as interesting as the finished product. In fact, he worked backwards with most products, taking them apart and revealing the individuality of the pieces that make the whole, to then add his own statements. As written in Design, which was one of the blurbs in which Virgil himself reflected on his approaches to different creative processes, it says, for Abloh, design was as much about the process of asking questions and prototyping as it was about the final product. Now, this idea is drawn from the concept of the typographic man by Marshall McLuhan. The concept is meant to describe the 21st century human way of human inventing, evolving, and advancing through the same mental methodology as typography. Creation through a systemized breakdown into individual pieces. And Virgil was actually a big fan of Marshall McLuhan's work, citing his "the medium is the message" quote as inspiration for his own design philosophy. So that's just a primer to exemplify how Virgil thought and how I think of Virgil in taking a look at what he has done with his work. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was his theme of sharing the mic. So Virgil was a thinker who highly valued the act of collaboration. He worked with artists, brands, household companies, from the automotive industry all the way to Broadway. And I think it's clear that he didn't see himself as one type of creator, as some artists see themselves as maybe a painter or a singer. Virgil was able to venture into these different industries and add value, but also see the value in taking on the challenge that was not at all like the last. And this thinking, when done on a wide scale and in front of as large an audience as Virgil had, to people who respected his work, pushes this idea that creativity is in how you think. It's your approach, not just the physical act of doing something. And that can do a lot for younger artists when they're just getting their start and have this idea that they need to find what exactly they're good at making and just try to stick to that. If they're able to figure out how they're good at creating, they can apply that endlessly. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was transparency and how crucial that was to Virgil as an idea. So when Virgil began his work as an architect, he was primarily interested in the idea of transparency, both literally and figuratively. And as someone interested in the bounds and stretches of language, Virgil's work is unique to me in that it brings this awareness to perception, being shaped by how we understand categorization and communication. It's quite philosophical when you think about it, so let me ground it a bit. I, for one, can admit that the look of the off-white, like construction yellow tape belts is such an eyesore to me since it was first released. Truthfully, I couldn't believe so many people bought it because it was just that ugly to me. And I would think to myself, why would someone want to wear something that visually breaks their outfit apart in this hideous way? And how many years later, I'm getting the answer to this question through this exhibit. From what I've gathered, Virgil's intention for the use of industrial motifs was a cultural reference to this shift in how we, the younger generations, are experiencing fashion. Streetwear has bled so deeply into high fashion that it's turning on its head this top-down view of fashion that we had in the past. I think this consistent theme of streetwear taken very literally conveys this attitude. Don't get me wrong, I still fucking hate the belts. I think they're actually disgusting looking. But the willingness for people to wear it proudly as this piece of designer clothing is exemplary. And the last point I'm making is going to be about commercialization. So, Church and State was the name of the gift shop that doubled as the final part of the exhibit. The blurb on it reads, Abloh made little distinction between art and commerce, recognizing that capitalism and consumption are inevitably present in the invention and creation of objects. Abloh, in his practice, questioned whether there truly is a difference between the commercial and the artistic. Okay, so almost every artist or creative, at least early on in their career, has had this apprehensive attitude towards commercializing their art, right? Selling what they create for profit, like making something with the intention of getting monetary gain from it. And I think every artist sees it as this big barrier that like throws them off their true path as a person whose mind functions in the state of wanting to make something out of nothing. And because that something costs money and often needs to make even more money to justify the investment to create it, there's this sometimes visceral opposition to the commercialization of art. And maybe because Virgil worked in music and fashion, two of the presently most commercialized creative industries, arguably, it would make sense for him to see it this way. But I also don't think he's wrong. I think if you can almost remove yourself from this notion that being a true artist means you go at your own pace and create without any bounds, or with bounds you place on yourself, you can find joy in the creative process. Because then it brings out a real question. How will I judge if I'm getting good at this? And how can I hone in what it is I need to be getting good at? Shooting for financial figures and attention from what you create can sharpen how you communicate through your art. Because then it's less about, am I expressing the exact feelings I have, the thoughts and feelings that are in here? Am I expressing that? And it leans into is the perspective I'm expressing actually being seen? You know, because it's kind of like that argument of, do you dress for yourself or do you dress for other people? And it's like, well, both. It has to be both, because if you're creating anything, people have to react to that painting. It's not that the painting's any less of a painting if nobody sees it, but that's kind of the purpose, is you're communicating something. So you have to think, or you have to be cognizant of the fact that what other people are seeing, what other people are understanding on the other half of your art matters. You know, it's up to you to what degree it matters, but it does matter. So yeah, those are just some thoughts and reflections I had going through the exhibit. I really like the experience of physically being in this space and being able to see the different industries and that Virgil touched and how they intersected to create this, like, you could see the embodiment of like who this person was through what they have in common, you know? Exciting for me to see, and also I think inspirational in a way, because it's so much time had been spent on those things, but he had such a short career at the same time. Like if you look at it in the grand scheme of like how much else he could have done if he hadn't passed away so young, but if you also look at it in, you know, the amount of years that he spent in his professional life, he did a lot. He did a lot, which I think is really cool, and really a testament to like being an artist and getting on that treadmill of, well, if this is what you say you're gonna do, you gotta keep creating, like you gotta keep making stuff. So I think it was pretty cool. You guys should check it out. Okay, bye.